Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to the iSpring Solutions webinar, where every week we talk about e-learning trends, share iSpring tips and tricks, and cover clients' cases. My name is Paulina, I'm the community manager, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. As a speaker, I have invited Junellen Neese, corporate training manager at HealthHelp. Hi Junellen, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you, Paulina, for having me.
Awesome. So, Junellen will be talking about and actually sharing her experience of how they got medical support staff proficient in their jobs. And hopefully, you guys will enjoy this webinar, this session, and will be able to actually implement some of the Junellen's tips and tricks in your daily e-learning and daily training. I would like to also mention that today's webinar is being recorded, so you guys will receive the replay of the session sometime really soon, either today or tomorrow. But I would very much encourage you to stay till the very end of the webinar because it's a wonderful opportunity to ask your questions, to address your questions to our iSpringer, to our presenter, Junellen. And of course, we are going to have a Q&A session. So, yeah, I just realized that I forgot to share my screen. I really apologize. But yeah, just let me do that really quickly. So guys, can you see my screen at that moment? Can you please tell me?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
wonderful. Okay, so I would like to also mention that maybe I already said that, but at the end of the webinar, we're going to have a Q&A session. So guys, please send your questions or your comments, anything you would like to ask Junellen in the question box, and you will find it on the right side of the GoToWebinar panel. It should be somewhere at the bottom. And right now on the screen, you should see how it looks. Okay, so I think at this point we are ready to begin. So, Junellen, let me please pass the mic over to you,
Great. Thank you.
as well as the presenter rights, of course.
Absolutely. Well, thanks. Thanks everyone for joining, and I hope this training can be helpful for you. Just a little background. You notice that I don't have a webcam. I'm not that shy. I honestly don't have a webcam. No one in our company has them because we deal with a lot of protected health data. And as a security measure, we don't have webcams on any of our computers. I know Paulina was asking me about that when we were planning this session, and we honestly don't have them. But I do want to point out that if you are training people remotely, I think the webcam is a great tool to help engage the audience and kind of let them know who you are. Even if you just use it at the beginning to say hi, it's a great tool. Just a little bit about my background. I understand from Paulina, we have guests on the webinar from all different industries. I work in healthcare. HealthHelp handles the prior authorization process for a number of major insurance companies. So basically, physician offices contact our company to obtain an authorization for something like a CT or a sleep study or a cardiac procedure, medical oncology, and things like that. So we do manage a lot of health data. We're a global company. We have call centers in Houston, Texas, where I'm located, in Albany, New York, and in Manila. And we're growing. We're taking on some more clients this year and expanding. So we had a lot of challenges. So I was tasked. I've been with the company since 2005 in various roles. And I always seem to get pulled into training or demonstrating things. So I was really excited in the fall when I was asked to take on training for the company. And I was given the task of evaluating our training programs from top to bottom to see what it is that we need to do or could do to improve training. I was asked to look at it with an open mind. What is it that we need to do? Is the length of training appropriate for new hires? Are the trainers the right people for the job? Can we do better in that way? Do we need more time? Do we need less time? Do we have the right tools and equipment? Is there anything we can do from the training perspective to retain employees better? If any of you work with a call center, you know there's a lot of attrition, so you're always training people. How can we improve customer service? How can we improve proficiency and knowledge? Our teams have to pronounce a lot of medical terminology, yet they're not necessarily clinical. There's a lot to learn, and how can we help them feel more competent on the job? And also, how can we listen to any responses from customer satisfaction surveys and kind of put that to work through our training program? So that was really the project set in front of me. So I looked at these components, really, the curriculum, the facilities people are trained in, which were different, the trainers themselves, the training style, the processes that we're actually using, and tried to figure out how we can get better results out of everyone and everything. And it was quite an interesting journey, because you go into things thinking that what you're going to find, and it did turn out to be a little bit surprising sometimes, but I found a lot of really great things that kind of needed structure. So starting with the curriculum, we had a manual, and we still do, as a matter of fact, a very well thought out process manual. Changes happen all the time, and of course there are updates and so forth, and it wasn't in the same state from one office to the next because of time and resources to keep things updated. So that was very concerning. Our company goal was definitely everyone trained, no matter what location, would come out of training equally trained, equally awesome, basically. So the curriculum was of concern. But the main thing about it was our trainers would have everyone in the classroom and literally demo on the screen our process, which of course people need to do, and that's still and always will be part of the training. You need to show people how the screens work, what you say, and so forth. But that's exhausting for the trainer. They would be in a 2-week training session every day teaching by basically showing the screens, and then sometimes having a trainee practice and so forth. There was some interaction, but that's very exhausting. One of the problems with that, if somebody does miss class or miss part of class, they miss the training. So we needed a way to kind of make a content-based training that can include some self-paced learning. Also, when you have someone that returns to the company after a leave of absence or something like that, you need some way to review without necessarily sitting in on an entire 2 weeks of new hire training. So we really needed to find a way to address that, and we did through some of the iSpring tools. I also found that the facilities weren't even the same from one office to the next. In the Houston office, everyone in training had an actual computer there, and so the trainer could give everyone an example, let them work through it, raise their hand if they have a question, and so forth. In the Albany office, the trainer had a computer which projected on the screen, and the trainees were at just a regular desk. And so for practice, they had to go into the actual call center and sit in workstations, which wasn't in a private training room, and the trainer had to kind of bounce around to help everyone. So it was not ideal as far as a facility goes. Then, of course, we ran into other things as I started to add more content. One office can play a video, one could not, as you can imagine, and most offices have some restrictions as far as viewing something of content that's not part of the company's policy. So we had some barriers with trying to make content available everywhere we went. So we did address that and make sure to get computers in all training rooms, because practice definitely is an important part of training, I believe. I was definitely happy to see that the trainers themselves did seem to be people who are very good at their job. They enjoy training, and I think that they are great at it. I had differing personalities, but they were both really strong trainers, actually 3 strong trainers who are really good at their job. I think, if anything, I want to make their job easier, and that's what I've started to try and do by bringing in some of the iSpring content and some of the other things that we're doing. Like I said, I think 8 hours a day for weeks training is very draining on anyone. It's a lot, and I think it's hard for the trainees to just listen to one speaker for such a long time. So some of the things that we did, I'll talk about the iSpring in particular that helped the trainers, but we also started bringing in like other people just to present small pieces of the content as kind of guest speakers. And this actually has worked out really well because we've had an opportunity to train some people in the company who really kind of want to step up and learn some new skills, and a presenting skill is definitely a good one. And they're subject matter experts, so it gives the trainer a little bit of a pause, but it gives other people an opportunity to be part of the training process, and they're really enjoying it. So that's been really helpful. It really speaks to training style of being able to include other speakers and other things. They did have some games, and we are incorporating a few more in the training. Actually had a lot of fun with a trivia game and using it as a way to review at the end of the week. And I think those things are great Friday afternoon when everyone is just so tired already. They've already reviewed a lot of material. There's been a lot to learn. And to review the week with a game, it just lightens it up and everyone has a good time. And actually it works very well as far as a review. Oddly enough, I know I attended class in New York and in Houston and audited classes that were being conducted for the Manila group. And you can't help but notice sometimes your processes could use improvement, because when you hear someone teaching it and explaining it and you hear the questions, even though outside the scope of the project, I did end up making some recommendations to processes and some recommendations to software. And it's really kind of a secondary benefit of really sitting down and watching the training program, because the tenured staff are used to our systems and they don't really question them anymore. They're used to it. But someone new looking at it with fresh eyes, they see things that maybe don't make so much sense, or maybe it's a little bit of an awkward workflow. And you hear those questions. So I did end up, for a week of training that I listened to in New York, I actually had 45 pages of notes, every little detail. So it took a bit to kind of go through that and figure out what our priorities was, because we needed to show measurable results. So one of the things we did was immediately implement a survey at the end of training to ask the trainees what they thought of the training. And they really liked it. I think they liked the fact that we had some interest in how they enjoy training, how they feel about it. I think just having the survey was good. But we asked questions about the content, about the length of training, about the training style. Did they feel they had enough handout materials and things like that? But the key question that we asked was, now that you've completed training, do you feel ready to perform your job? Yes or no? Very simple question. And that, I'll show you how that worked out for us. It's kind of interesting. So some of the things that I recommended after visiting the training process a bit was to incorporate the self-paced learning modules and review quizzes, which was the iSpring, of course. The trainers still show the trainees our process using the real screens and the real steps that they're going to follow on the real job, and they role play on phone calls and things like that. But the team actually can review the modules, which I start with PowerPoint and build those up, and then take little review quizzes to make sure they're understanding everything. We let them take those quizzes as much as they want, and people learn at different pace. So it's okay to keep taking the quizzes. But what this has done is given everyone a good review tool. I mentioned earlier, sometimes you have someone on leave of absence, they come back, they need a review. So these modules have helped us with that. But one of the main things that it's done is it has allowed us to change our teaching style. One of my recommendations was to have a smaller class size, because I could see I attended two different classes, and one was about 10 people and the other had 24, and I could see a big difference in how people were engaged. With 24 people, you don't always get a turn, so it was very different. So I recommended smaller classroom size, but even with that, the way the trainers are now using the iSpring modules has really helped. So they'll take half the class to go on through the iSpring and review the content that was just presented. So they'll go through the slides, read them, do the interactions, and I'll show you some examples in a minute. Take the quiz. Well, The trainer can work with the other half of the class and do actual role play or make believe calls or go through some other content or allow them to log in and actually do some transactions for us in the system. And the trainer can work with that smaller group of people in a much more meaningful way. Then the team can swap and go on to iSpring, and the other ones can have that hands-on practice. It's worked really well, and everyone feels like they've had more of an opportunity to have their questions answered, and they feel a bit more comfortable when it comes time to actually get on the phone because they've had this practice, and they've worked with small groups. Then the trainer during the break or whatever can go on to iSpring and take a look at the reporting for that particular module and see how everyone is doing on the quiz. And if the majority is missing a certain question, then they know that this is something to spend another few minutes with, maybe review a new example. If everybody's got it, then it's time to move on. If they're really struggling, then we need to spend more time on this particular topic. So it's given us an opportunity to really gauge training. The last thing you want to do is spend way too much time on a topic and everyone already gets it and they just want to learn more and move on. And on the other hand, you don't want to rush on to the next concept when there's still the need to review. So we've made that really part of our process. One of the main things that has helped us is these modules are accessible for all the locations, so everyone is using the same material. So if it's teaching how to document something or how to speak or what the definition is or what the rules are, everyone's getting that in the same way because we do want consistency. So that's really helped us a lot. We did make those changes to the facilities. That seemed like a good plan. We definitely want to continue the professional development of our trainers and use the reporting to pace the class. I'm actually planning to have a training summit later this year where we bring all of the trainers together and do some roundtables and some hands-on training and maybe even learn some more iSpring tools when we're there. The smaller class size, definitely, we're using those interactions and more practice and role play. I think everyone's experience, whether you have a call center as part of your industry or whether you've been a customer, you know that person who sounds so new. And, you know, I always feel sorry for them and I try to be patient, but it's frustrating for that new person and it can be frustrating for a client. So the role play and practice has really helped. We've had an opportunity to listen and monitor phone calls from people who've come out of training with the new style that we're using, and they really don't have that new sound. And it's really a great thing. I mean, they maybe not as fast as somebody who's been doing the job for a year, but to hear them sound comfortable and competent is just a great thing. It's rewarding, and you know that the clients on the other end are happy, or they maybe don't detect at all that they have someone new on the phone. I mentioned that we made recommendations for system enhancements, and actually some of those are ongoing now. I think you can't separate the two when you start looking at training and you get those questions. So I mentioned that we wanted to know results because actually a lot of time was devoted to this project and we want to make sure that it's yielding some results. So we're measuring, of course, a couple of ways. We do the survey, like I mentioned. We have a QA team who's looking at how the normal statistics, talk time, how efficient everyone's in the phone, any errors found, and so forth, and trying to compare that to how new hires have done in the past when they're in their early weeks working on the phone or handling transactions. But some of the feedback that I've enjoyed the most is really not the mathematical feedback, but supervisor feedback. Hearing from team leads and supervisors that these new hires seem to be more competent than the people that they already have on their team has just really meant a lot. And one of the things that we've done to make that happen is to give people a broader background. It seemed that the training would dig straight into the task at hand and the processes without giving a clear understanding of the overall objectives and a little bit more medical background. A lot of our processes hinge upon radiation safety and patient safety and things like that. So we try to bring a little bit more of that into the training And I think that people are feeling like we're investing in them a bit more, giving them a little bit more company background, not to go too far with it, but just enough to make them feel like we want to educate them and not just teach them how to process a transaction. I think it's gone a long way. So we're continuing to do all of this, and it goes on, and every time we add some more value to the training program, we're seeing more and more results, which I'm excited about. So I mentioned that we surveyed, and this is all still new and in progress. So Paulina, we're going to see more as the time goes on, but so far we've improved the employee feeling of being ready by 12.5%, or reduced it. It's an improvement of 7.5%. Sorry, we've reduced those. When we first surveyed, we had about 20% saying they didn't feel ready. You're never going to get 100% because some people just don't have the confidence to say I'm ready. But we want people to feel that a reasonable level of confidence when they first step onto the floor to do their job, and continue to help them grow in the job. Obviously, there's continual training in our industry. So we're excited about this much progress, and I'm comfortable saying that we're going to have more because we keep adding value to the program. So our next steps really are to continue developing our curriculum, training team development. We've implemented a new process for updates. This was an interesting situation. We have a team of clinical nurse reviewers, quite a large one actually. And every time there is an update for the nurse review team, whether it's a compliance matter or clinical changes, they are receiving an update, and our clinical education team would need to maintain very impeccable records because we're subject to audit by several accreditation bodies, by our clients, by CMS. So we need to maintain records of who was trained, did they attest that they read and understood the training, the date of the training, the content of the training. And they were maintaining all of these records, no problem. They were on spreadsheets, they were saved in files, and so forth. But when I looked at what was involved, this team of people who should be spending their time educating were burdened with a really heavy administrative task, because each nurse would review their training, print out the form, sign that they've reviewed the training and understand it, email it back. Then the trainer would have to go and log it into the spreadsheet. So you get the idea. This is a lot of steps for a process that just seemed very ongoing. So what we did was move those updates into iSpring, and we just added a one-question quiz at the end to log that attestation from each nurse. Now the nurse education team can run a report on a given update, see who hasn't completed it yet, and email those folks a reminder as needed. And any audit or any need to demonstrate what training has taken place, when and who took it, all they need to do is run the reports. This has saved them so much time, and they're really happy with the process. I also use it for any kind of training updates for the call centers, and it's worked out well. We're able to distribute new updates to all 3 locations and use the same process to measure who's taken the update. And we add a quiz sometimes just to allow people a little self-check to make sure they understand what's new. Some of the updates are simple, sometimes they can be more complex. So we'll use the updates that way, but the amount of paperwork reduction is mind-boggling, and nobody needs to spend time doing that. So we've made that agent update process part of the way that we handle it, and it's, awesome. I mentioned overseas training. We definitely, and I don't know if any of you attending, I'd love to know if you're training people in more than one location, in more than one culture. I actually will be traveling to Manila in July to train some additional people there face-to-face. And I'm excited about that because I've been training the team over there over the phone for the most part. And I know you really count on having content when you're training over the phone because you don't have the opportunity to do as many hands-on things. And that's what also has been one of our needs and challenges is some of the training is done hands-on with people in the room, and some is done remotely over the computer. So we needed content that works for both styles of training. And I'll show you in a moment some of the training that we've adapted even to the overseas team. So let me open that up and do that. So one of the things that we've done in iSpring, I used I used iSpring for a while creating content, and then when we adapted the learning system as well, I just had all my content in iSpring just all over the place, and I would just send people links to what they needed to do, and our trainers kind of knew how to use the search, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, what's this learning path thing? So I started to use the learning path, but it did exactly what we needed when it came to new hire training, is create a curriculum. And I think that, is really what we needed. So we were able to set this up and have a structure. So you have an introduction, you have a process. We even include some videos here of the actual process. And I mentioned that we were giving some more background training. One of the other things, and this kind of came out of feedback from our supervisors and trainers, I started to add some optional training. So you see here that there's one on professions in radiology, and it's an optional training. And I have a few more optional trainings throughout. The reason is when a supervisor has a group of people training, and say they do assign a quiz or a module to review, you always have that one person who finishes right away and they're needing something to do. So having optional content allows people time, something to do that's meaningful to kind of fill in. There's definitely people who like to learn just a bit more. They want more background. So all of the optional modules, they're not on the final exam, but this is just additional information that gives them more industry knowledge and just more interesting content, but it also gives the trainer something to provide those people who seem to rush through things and need something to do. So it's something to think about if you have additional videos or examples or content that you can create. It's a good way to give people some additional things that they can see. So some of the ways, Paulina asked me if I could show an example. We started off building this content pretty much a PowerPoint, and it works really well and successful. I think one of the speakers at a recent iSpring webinar talked about how important it is to make the training consistent, so always have kind of the same style, same look and feel, so that people can engage in it easily and they're not kind of relearning how the training works. And we tried to adapt that because I thought it really made a lot of sense. But the interactions have really been a fun tool for us. So I'll show you one here. And I know everybody has different industries they may be training on, but with these interactions, you can really let people practice a scenario. So they have a question and they can answer yes or no, and they'll see a different answer. And these characters are fun, because you can change their expression, and it kind of helps. I use this for a customer service one. Of course, if you don't say the right thing, the person has a frowny face. So it's kind of fun to do that. But if you answer yes, it kind of leads you to a different workflow, because some things are just hard to train and need a lot of examples. So the trainee can go through, and this is really reviewing something that the trainer would have already presented and talked about and shown some examples. But this is a way for everyone to review, because there's a lot to learn in those 2 weeks, and it gives everyone an opportunity to practice. So I'm kind of running through this, answering it in different ways, and the system will let you provide those scenarios. We've used this interaction for a number of trainings just to give people a chance to kind of practice what they did in class, and it really worked out well. And another thing that we did even on a quiz was to actually have example documents that were attached to the iSpring and let them look at that, and then we would ask questions about the document. And that really gave us a chance to give everyone some practice with real-world tasks without actually going into the system when they're not fully trained yet, which definitely makes a lot of sense. I know that Paulina mentioned that a number of people attending were in healthcare, so I know that you probably operate under a lot of the same compliance that we do. We're in a very compliant industry, so the training modules have really helped us to make sure that we're getting that compliance training out in an effective way, and that we are including all the steps needed, and we have to obviously have refresher training all of the time. So sometimes it's only self-paced and sometimes it's classroom-led. So it's really helped us. But if you haven't used the learning path, I really think it's a good way to organize all of this in a way that gives the student an actual curriculum that they can follow. So actually I can view this as the actual student because I'm in here as an administrator. So they can actually see all the courses that they're expected to take. And they kind of get an idea how long they are. You can see how many slides there are. Is there a quiz? Notice that the optional one didn't have a quiz. I guess I could have. So you have different types of courses, and of course a final exam, which we use an interesting way to take the exam. So our students can take that final exam twice. So what we did was we loaded in the questions that cover all the topics we covered throughout training in chapters. And we actually loaded over 200 questions into this exam, but the student only takes about 60 questions because we randomized it. So the good news is we cover all the key topics that we must cover for the exam. So there are questions related to compliance, of course, to customer service, to our processes, to clinical terminology. All of those things are included, but they get a sampling of questions from each one. So if they are not able to get that passing score, they can take the test again. They will not get the same test, but they'll get the same subject matter. So that's proven to be a really good way to do it. Again, I am hoping to make life better for our trainers. They had paper tests with 50 questions that they would hand out. Then the trainers would have to grade the tests, which is time consuming, of course. And then if the person needed to take another test, they had a couple of different versions going. And those documents are tedious to keep up with too, because if something changes, you have to go through test version 1 through 6 and check for anything that needs changing and updating to make sure the test is still consistent with the training. So this in itself was a big process for the trainers to update and maintain, and then the correcting. Of course, you have students wanting to know, did I pass? Did I pass? So, you know, it's helpful to be able to provide that immediate feedback. They see it on the screen. In fact, they get a certificate, which I was able to customize that certificate on iSpring so that they could have a certificate that was unique to HealthHelp on there. So that was kind of a fun way to do it. One of the other things that we did, because we're training people overseas, I added a training. I think this one is just fun. But this is optional training for our U.S. employees, but we created this training to help our foreign employees understand the crazy things we say in the United States. So it's just our American idiom. So if she's a peach, what does that really mean? I mean, I can't imagine somebody saying this to me if I didn't know what it meant. So it's the kind of training to do, sorry, on a day when you've had a lot of tedious content, we've already talked about processes and steps and compliance, then I like to mix in the customer service and the soft skills to keep the day more interesting. And yes, the team had a lot of laughs with these, but I think sometimes when it's funny and when it's fun, people remember a concept. And so hopefully when that person has a phone call and someone says, "You're twisting my arm," they don't misunderstand that, because all of these things seem a little strange if you take the words at face value. So we had some fun with this. And I kind of enjoyed making it, to be honest. You get a good laugh. And every time we do this, we always ask everyone for more ideas or more expressions that they've heard that they didn't understand at first. And the discussion is always, we always get a lot of good laughs out of it because of all the crazy things that we say in America that really don't mean what it says on paper. So we've had fun with that. Definitely bringing the fun into training. It really helps a lot and it goes a long way. So I think the future for us is to continue developing our content. I'm actually at a place where I'm starting to teach our staff how to use iSpring so that more content can be created, and there's been a lot of interest in that. Paulina, let me pause and see if there are any questions. I hope this has been helpful so far.
Sure, yeah. Actually, there are questions. Do you have any other material you would like to still cover?
I really wanted to leave the time for questions. I mean, there's certainly, I could talk more about our training, but I think this would be a good time to pause and
Okay.
get those
Okay,
questions.
so
I
then we
don't
can
want
get to the Q&A session. All right.
yes, I don't want to miss the questions and have people feel like we didn't answer them.
Okay, awesome. So first of all, Junellen, could you please let everybody else know one more time what exactly iSpring products you're using?
Oh, yes. Okay, so I started using the iSpring suite, and with that, I was basically developing very enriched PowerPoint, and we were downloading that directly onto a website. But we also use the learning, so that's how we're able to create these learning paths. We use the report, so we have the learning management system and the suite.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen your webinar on the upgrade, and we are planning to get it. The upgrade is in our procurement process right now, so I'm waiting to have that upgrade as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And there is a question from Ross. Are you utilizing iSpring or any other applications to help with the role playing, or is it all instructor-led role playing?
That's a good question. We have a little bit of everything. So some of the role playing we do is instructor led. So that one of the things that trainers have to do is get all those examples ready, and they'll do like mock phone calls or work through tasks. They'll even print out copies of screens and mix them up and have people put them in order, and a few little games like that. But honestly, Paulina, if you don't mind me talking
Hmm.
about another tool, we do a trivia game, and it's called Cahoots, I think. It's free, and you just go online and you can load all these trivia questions, but it's a blast because the people can play it on their phone or from a computer. And it actually looks a lot like the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire type thing, where you have the question and the four answers. And then after everyone, and they all get a screen name. They can make up their own names. So we had different kooky names. And so everyone answers, and then it shows who's on the leaderboard after each answer. It's a lot of fun. You definitely want the person being the host to be very vibrant and high energy, and that makes it even more fun for the group. A colleague, Teresa, did that with our group overseas, and even though we weren't in the room with them, they were just laughing and carrying on because they had such a good time. But we used it to review all the vocabulary from the week, and it actually was more effective on Friday afternoon, I think, than some other boring way. A couple of other games, though, for a self-paced game, I do use the iSpring, the FAQ tool, because I encourage everyone to kind of use it like it's a flashcard, and they can review a question and think about the answer, and then they can display it and see if they're right, and they can kind of do that on their own. So those are a couple of things, but I'm always looking for ideas as far as ways to bring some fun into the training and help everyone learn.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I would like to add here that with a new release, there's been added a new interaction that can be used as a flashcard.
Oh, great. I'm going to like
So,
that.
yeah.
I'll use it.
All right, so there was another question. I'm not sure if you can cover this one, but I think that's a great one from Ross again. After the training, what type of analytics are you using to show the return on investment on this initiative? We've struggled with this for some time now.
That is such a good question, and it's interesting because our director over operations has wanted to establish this position for years, but it's always a difficult one to justify because work goes on and everything's okay. How do you measure an improvement in the training program? So it's been a bit of a struggle, but we actually have our training program enhancements as a quality improvement project for URAC. Those of you in healthcare would know that they are an accrediting body. So a couple of things to measure success. Some may be helpful, I don't know, but the actual surveying of the trainees is one. So we see their confidence level improving. Our QA team always QAs calls and task work. So they're looking for everyone to stay on point with all of the proper scripting on the phone, as well as proper documentation and error-free transactions. So we're able to look at how new trainees are doing right after training, 60 days after training, 90 days after training, and how they compare with trainees from before we've improved our programs, as well as tenured people as well on the floor. But one of the big ones too, once someone is good at their job, they take less time on the phone. So that's another area that we look at, is talk time on the phone. And I know these things all seem to apply to a call center, but that's what I'm dealing with. So we're able to see some improved efficiency, and that definitely can be translated to dollars, but it is a tough one. It's the soft improvements that are most rewarding to me, but that's just my personality. I love hearing from supervisors and management that people are doing a better job, that people feel better, or just like hearing from people who've come out of training and say, this was really good. That's the part that rewards me. But I know as a company, you need to be able to demonstrate that your investment is paying off. I'm certain the clinical team that is now doing all of that paperwork could probably quantify the time they were spending, because it was a lot to maintain spreadsheets and to be tracking people down through individual emails. It just, common sense tells me that was a lot of time spent, and now they're able to just push a button and have a comprehensive report. So I think there's ways. It's definitely a challenge. But my main goal was to try to get that before picture. And I think if you're going to launch a major change in your training program, whether it's implementing the iSpring modules or anything, it's good to get that before picture, whether it's phone metrics or quality grading, and just general satisfaction. The survey was just one of several things that we use to measure. So hopefully that answers your question. It's a good one.
Thank you very much. And there's a question from Rick, if you could possibly say what was the name of the trivia game again.
I think it was called Cahoots.
Do you know?
K-A-H. Well, gee, I would Google it, but I'm the presenter on the screen. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
But I believe that's the name of it. It was, it's free and it's a lot of fun.
Oh,
And what we did to create
Kahoot.com.
and to create the content for that, what we did to help out, because then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I've got to come up with 50 trivia questions. It can like work. So what we did was we went into each quiz that we had, and if you're opening the quiz, you can go to File and print it out as a Word document, or keep it as a Word document. So then we just used all of our various quiz questions for the basis of the trivia game. And we just merged all of those into one big document so that we could use that to load the trivia questions. And it was also a good way, by the way, to create a Word document or PDF of the quiz. It was a good way to get other people involved in reviewing our quizzes and our final exam, like just being able to share a document as opposed to having everyone jumping into iSpring and taking the quiz. Sometimes people want to see it in a document. So that was a good little trick to use to give it something that we could review. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed using the trivia. I'll be honest, I used it, and it was a team in Manila that we were training, and I used it each Friday of the 3 weeks of training that was going on as a way to review the materials from that week.
Mm-hmm.
And there was another training class in the next room that had a trainer there, actually. And on Friday afternoons, they had this long paper test. So both classes would disperse for a break. And my class who was in the trivia game, they were like hopping and dancing and happy and, oh, this is fun, and I beat you, and blah, blah, blah. And the people in the room with this long paper test were like drained and tired and looking for coffee. So it it was nice to be part of the fun group, but I know at the end of the day, we want to make sure people learn what we're trying to teach
Right.
them, and it was effective. They did learn, but they were laughing and having a good time doing it. I mean, you wouldn't want to spend your entire training curriculum playing games, but Friday afternoon is definitely a good time to place that. I feel like at that point, people are pretty tired, and you do need to review the week. I think a review is always good. And we use the iSpring modules for that same reason too,
Mm-hmm.
is to, if they struggle with things, oh, we'll review the third module. That's where we cover that, and you can go in and look at it yourself. It helps when you have a class of people and maybe one person is stuck on one concept. There's something there where they can fall back on and review that as well. So, yeah, the trivia game was a lot of fun. I'd love to hear if anybody on the call uses any other games that would be fun to include, because whether they're just things you made up or tools you use, I think it's fun to. Oh, okay, it's Kahoot, KAHOOT.IT. And basically you set it up and then you give everybody a game pin and they just go on, and nobody has to download any software or anything to use it, which I thought was really appealing because, you can jump through a lot of hoops with things like that. And so the attendees can play on their phone or on their computer. And you, the host, you can project it all on one big screen, or they can see it on their phones and stuff. And so it was a lot of fun.
Uh-huh.
But
Thank you.
it's good to tie it all together, definitely. But the way we constructed that was just out of all of our quizzes, basically.
Awesome. And there's a comment from Ross. We use a um, Jeopardy template, and the new hire teams love it. The quiet students in the room suddenly emerge as vicious competitors, great icebreakers, and review opportunity.
I love it when the quiet people come out of their shell. That's great. I love the idea, and I think that's true that you have a new hire class and you have
Hmm.
all these different personalities. Um, a game can be the big equalizer sometimes. And I think too, having the self-paced content is good for those people who kind of are quiet and want to review things at their own pace, or if
Hmm.
they're more visual, it helps them. So I do like to make sure that we consider every learning style, because
Yeah,
some people really need an example and some people want to read all the details and some people like the audio, so we definitely have included that as well.
exactly. And I'm reading other comments, and Rick says, I use the Jeopardy game as well. Use it with an electronic buzzer system, becomes extremely lively.
Okay.
Awesome.
I love that. I may look at that and bring that with me, bring that plan with me to Manila,
Hmm.
because 3 weeks I'll be training.
Hmm.
Um, that's that can be exhausting. So I'm busy completing a lot of iSpring content just to give myself a break, so that the students can be reviewing and I have an opportunity to pause and see how they're progressing so far.
Hmm.
And the games will be great.
Right.
Any
Let,
other?
yeah, let's read another one and then get back to the questions since we still have some time left. So, Johnny says, I've used a public domain once named Hot Potato that has different games for our HIPAA training.
Oh, great. Hot potato. That was a game when I was a kid.
Yeah,
Like a
exactly. Like the hot
cool.
potato, yeah. And there was a question from Sandy. Do you enter any type of information into your learning system for students that might record more hands-on activities that you have to do in a clinical setting, not computer-based? Is that clear?
Maybe. Um, I know that we try to provide background and an understanding. I think that's some of the content we've added because the actual people who work in the call center that we're typically training are doing a phone transaction, entering information on the computer. But we did try to back up and provide a more of an overview and more insight as far as what that transaction really means, starting with the patient and their physician and all of the people that are involved,
Mm-hmm.
and including all of the government regulations and just kind of all those pieces instead of jumping straight into the transaction. Not sure what if that's answering the question though. I think you definitely could use iSpring to illustrate clinical examples, and clinical case examples would be really cool through
Mm-hmm.
iSpring using the interactions.
Yeah, so Sandy says, I didn't realize that the training was for call centers, so clinical education likely isn't needed. I was thinking more healthcare occupations.
Okay, our nurse teams do get clinical education, and that trainer definitely is starting to use iSpring for some of that training where it's more about clinical criteria and so forth. I would say that the interactions would work great because they will allow you to put scenarios together, and the branching logic is really good for that.
Hmm.
And also the FAQ, it's a good way to store a lot of definitions. We've actually had our nurses help us create training where we've had them record the pronunciation of a lot of medical terminology, and it creates kind of a library. But I think that would be helpful for both the clinical tier or office staff alike.
Hmm. Right. And there was I think the almost the same question from Himat. Do you use iSpring to teach clinical and technical staff?
Yes.
Hmm. Okay. And there's
Most but it's been all of that, and technical meaning sometimes clinical, but also staff on computer skills and technical items like that as well.
mhm. All right, and there is a question from Liesel. Um, our final exams are required to be under controlled conditions, but can be done via an oral examination. Does iSpring Learn allow for this functionality to do oral exams via via video calling as opposed to setting it up separately via Skype, etc.?
Paulina, I'm going to let you answer that one.
I am actually not sure, but I will definitely get back to you, Lizzle, with more information about that.
Yeah, somehow I don't think so, but I do know that in the quiz maker you can record the questions, but it doesn't capture the answer from the person taking the
I
test.
also know that in the survey type of questions, there is an option to send the essay, like actually fill out in
Oh,
hand
yes.
in the paperwork. So, yeah, I think we can figure it out for you. And there was another question from Sandy. Do you translate your education into other languages? And if yes, how do you go about it?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because years back, I did have to translate for HealthHelp a lot of clinical criteria into Spanish. At this time, I'm not training anyone in other languages. So if that were to occur, I would probably be looking for uh, the best way to go about that as well. Yeah, I know that from my experience, though, any kind of tool that you load content into, I do not trust the translation. Actually, if you are fluent in another language and you want a good laugh, just enter English in one of those tools and see what it comes up with. So I don't feel like those tools are reliable. Maybe to get it started, but there's so much editing that it seems like I tried to use a tool like that, and the editing was going to be more work than just sitting down and translating the work, um, which is unfortunate. But maybe I just didn't try the right tool. But it's definitely a challenge. But I don't see why you couldn't create this content in English and then just copy each um, PowerPoint and make it into the other language. At least you wouldn't have to switch out the graphics and the other elements and make a learning path for each language that you're supporting. It's definitely a challenge. I haven't found a good tool for it though.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, I think at this point we need to wrap up, and I would like to thank you, Jonathan, for telling our attendees about your case of using iSpring. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me. And thanks for these games and ideas from the audience. That's great. I love it.
Yeah, and I would like to thank our audience for being so active and asking your questions and sharing your experience as well. Thank you very much, guys. And I would like to also mention that the recording of this webinar will be available. Um, Today I will upload it to YouTube, and tomorrow I will do an organized mailing sending you the video replay for it. And also, I wanted to say that next week we are going to have a training about the content library. Content library is a library of different assets like characters, templates, um, backgrounds, and icons that you can use in your courses. And by using this type of assets, you drastically decrease the time of content creation. So we are actually going to tell you what content library is, show you what it looks like, what kind of assets it includes, and also will create in real time the course using content library from A to Z. So I think this will be very interesting webinar, and I would like at this point share with you the link that you're welcome to use to sign up for this webinar. And just a moment. I am sharing it in the chat. So yes, guys, you're more than welcome to attend this session. Okay, so I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you guys for joining, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye bye.